Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's testament to the transformative power of science that has facilitated the breaking of bread between Alan Peachy and the evil socialists on this side of the House. Testament to the transformative power of science. And I'm happy to stand in this House, both as a member of the Labour Party and a member of the Royal Society, to speak on the Royal Society of New Zealand Amendment Bill. And I want to thank my caucus colleagues and my whips, who apparently think that I'm some kind of science snob and thought that it would be amusing to put me on the speaking list on a bill which is introducing the humanities into the Royal Society. They thought it would be character building. And I want to say they're going to be very disappointed, because I wholeheartedly support the introduction of humanities into the Royal Society. I do. It's called personal growth. Personal growth. Look how far I've come. And I was hurt, Mr. Speaker, genuinely hurt by the comments of my good friend and colleague Grant Robertson, who would insinuate that I would think that his qualification is any less than mine. Although I do note, with absolutely no judgment, Mr. Speaker, that his particular qualification is not on the list. But that's all right. I'm sure that's something that can be amended at Select Committee. I'm sure it was a mere oversight, Mr. Speaker. His politics degree. It's not on the list. It's not on the list. Well, this can be something that will be debated at the Select Committee. But in all seriousness, this is a very important piece of legislation, because one of the goals of the previous Labour government was to facilitate more multidisciplinary approaches to research. And we did this through the Centres of Research Excellence, of which there are a number around the country now, which brought together a number of disciplines under the banner of particular areas of research. It's had enormous success in bringing together the private sector, the universities and the CRIs to work together so that we're not doing overlapping research, but in fact coordinating that research. The multidisciplinary approach has often been the holy grail, because sometimes it is different, and we make jokes about the hierarchy of the scientific community, but it is actually very true. There is a hierarchy, a pecking order, and sometimes it's difficult to get around that. But when you can, the outcomes are outstanding. And I recently visited the Centre for the Study of Agriculture, Food and Environment at Otago University, which is one of these multidisciplinary, it's not a centre of research excellence, but it's a multidisciplinary group. They bring together economists, sociologists, geographers, physicists, marine biologists. All these groups come together, statisticians, and they work on areas of public policy. And I keep thinking it's a shame that more MPs don't know about this group, because some of the areas they work on are absolutely key to what we do in here. And what they look at is the gap between what governments try to do and what the public want and how they feel about it. And they use the example of renewable energy, which New Zealanders overwhelmingly support. And then they look at whenever we try and get a wind farm in, it adds so much expense because of the public backlash often to it, or other forms of renewable, tidal energy. And what they're saying is that, in fact, sometimes politicians don't do that work, and there are things that they're working on now that it can be put in place to make sure that when these projects come up, we can save time and money and all the angst that often go around them. So it's a very important unit for this group. They're looking in areas of fisheries, agriculture, right across the board. And I would recommend that members of Parliament visit this group. One of the problems is that their funding is now uncertain. And with this new approach to funding research in New Zealand, which is that everything has to be business-facing, this is a group which is going to save us money and is going to have good public benefit for the country. But because they can't absolutely quantify exactly how much money that's going to be, their funding is now uncertain. And I think all members of this House would think that is crazy. And so I think this is a very timely piece of legislation from the Royal Society, which is promoting this multidisciplinary approach, which I think should make all members of this House think very carefully about the expectations that we put on the scientific community and on the research community, because sometimes there's truth to that adage about the cost of everything and the value of nothing. And I think sometimes it's difficult. The scientists and the researchers in our universities and our CRI sometimes find it frustrating that maybe politicians and parliamentarians really don't understand exactly their needs and the value that they can contribute to our society. And I hope that this will be part of the debate on this bill. We support an evidence-based approach to policy, Mr Speaker. Clearly, the social sciences and the humanities have a big role to play in that. I think all parliamentarians should adopt an evidence-based approach and say that when we're spending taxpayers' money, we should be able to point to the research which says it will work, and if it won't work, we should justify, for example, why we're spending so much money on boot camps when every single bit of research says they will not work.
Colin King.
Thank you,